Guys, I'm going to make this video as not boring as possible. However, this is not one of those do this, and that's, going to take care of everybody's issue. Every vehicle's a little bit different. And just because your AC is not working, it doesn't mean that it's low or as low as other people's. Temperature plays a big role in everything about an AC system. There's also the fact that you really can't get an understanding of what is happening in your AC without looking at the high pressure side of the system. And anytime you go to the parts store and get a can of refrigerant, the one, whether it's got a gauge or you buy a gauge separate, it doesn't matter. It's only going to read the low side. The problem with that is you could be at the correct pressures on the low side, and the high side could be doing all sorts of different things. I'll show you an example of that. Okay, this right here is a basic chart. On this side you have the temperatures and then what each side of the system should be reading. So anything you buy from the parts store is going to be just in here. Alright, so let's say it's 85 degrees out. It says you should be between 45 and 55 psi on the low side. Well, when you're there and at that temperature, on the high side should be between 225 and 250. If you have some sort of a blockage or another issue, or if it's over serviced, you could end up blowing a line. Any number of things can happen. So, like over here, if you're in range on both sides, AC is working properly. If you're low on the low side and low on the high side, that'd be add refrigerant. Now, you wouldn't know to add refrigerant if all you have is the low side gauge. If you're low on the low side and high on the high side, system needs service, possibly a blockage of the expansion valve or orifice tube. You're not going to know if you're high without that high pressure gauge. If you're high on the low side and low on the high side, chances are you have a bad AC compressor. Again, you're not going to know. If you're high on both, the system's overcharged. Remove refrigerant. Venting is illegal in the USA. Okay. The other problem you run into is that, like, when you go buy AC Pro or something like that and it shows the gauge, the range, well, if your compressor's off because you have a bad relay, your fan's not working, your low pressure switch isn't working, your high pressure switch is cutting it off, for whatever reason, if your clutch isn't coming on because of whatever protection measure or problem, it's going to read high. Okay, so when you plug in your little gauge and it says you should be between 45 and 55, well, if the compressor's off and it's reading 45 to 55, then your system's actually low even though it shows it's in range. And if it's showing that you're at 100 psi, you might be thinking it's overfilled when the compressor's just not on, so therefore there's no vacuum on the low side sucking it down to this pressure. So there's quite a few things that you have to go over in order to be able to do this and know you're going to get it right. So a lot of people probably just turn the video off, and here I am rambling, but at the same time, it's just not you're not going to find a video that's going to, you might find one that works, it worked for them in their certain situation, but you have to do things like verify the compressor's on. And be able to see it. Now I'm going to show you the way to do it without seeing the high side, the safe way to do it without seeing the high side. And the way I'm going to show you, you could actually do it without even having a gauge at all. If you knew your system was low on refrigerant, I'm going to show you the way to service it up from the low side, only seeing the low side, and making it so that it's within the range that it needs to be, and it's not going to kick off because it's low, but you're also not going to be overpressurized on the high side. And that's the intent of this video, is basically to show how you can do this correctly, understand what you're doing, Therefore, you can apply it to your specific situation and get it done without causing more problems, and knowing kind of at least what's going on with it. Because as far, you're not just going to take a can and plug it in and hold the trigger down and miraculously your AC's fixed. Not unless you're really lucky. Now you're going to start this process with the engine off. Open your hood, and you're going to find your service ports. Now I'm going to be hooking my gauges up to both sides to show you what's going on, but in most of your else cases, you're just going to be using your low side. On this vehicle, this is a 2007 Chevy Express van. This cap here, this is your high side port. The way you can tell is because it's a little bit bigger in diameter, and sometimes it's got a metal Schrader valve, sometimes it's got a rubber one like this. This just has a rubber bumper. You need to be careful with these when you're hooking up to them. But you want to start with the engine off and the AC off, and the reason for that is sometimes the ports are hard to get to. If your engine's hot, you're going to burn your hand trying to hook up your gauges, your refrigerant hose and gauge and all that stuff. And also, if your AC is on, then you're going to be building pressure on the high side if you were to hook to that, and it's not as safe to hook up or unhook with those higher pressures. So with the engine off and it's stabilized, you might be at 100 psi on both sides of the system. With the engine running and the AC on, you could be building, depending on the temperature outside, you could be building anywhere from 200 to 150 to 350 psi if you're in a really hot area, and you don't want to be connecting or disconnecting when your pressures are that high. So it's easier and safer to start with it off. Okay, so I located one. Here's the high side. Now I need to find the low side, and on every vehicle they can be in totally different places. On this one, I don't know where we're at. The reason I'm doing this is because sometimes when the vehicle is, oh, here it is. A lot of times it will be right here on this is your accumulator or receiver dryer. This van, when you initially start it, it doesn't really want to blow cold air. Eventually it does after everything warms up. And I think what I'm going to find when I hook the gauges up is that it's just a little bit low, and on cooler days or cooler mornings when it's warm enough to use it, but the engine's not hot enough to create enough heat around the condenser and stuff to get the pressures high enough. Because basically this low pressure switch here, shuts the AC down. Most vehicles it's 20 psi. So let's say I start the engine up and I'm at 19 psi. On the low side, it's not going to kick on, but as everything warms up and heats up, the pressures in the condenser can come up a little bit, and actually cause it to kick on and work. And then while I'm driving, it's going to create a higher pressure. So I think that's what I'm going to find. On hot days it works, on cooler days it doesn't. And again, your pressures are dependent on the temperature. One of the things you need to know before doing this is what the ambient temperature is where you're working on the vehicle. I was actually looking I have a thermometer I carry around and I use for this purpose, and I let it sit out 10 minutes or so and see what the ambient is, near the condenser or the grill. But what works in a pinch is just to get on the internet or on your phone and update your weather and just see what it says the temperature is for your area, and usually that's close enough to be able to do this. Okay, so another tidbit of information. Ounces matters when it comes to buying refrigerant. Brands like AC Pro, none of R134A is R134A. Okay, some of it will say it has extra additives, it makes it cool, colder. Forget about that nonsense. There's a couple things that might, if your system's working properly in the first place, like ice 32 I think it is, or something like that, may give a slight performance benefit, but R134 is R134. I buy this is 12 ounces, and these run me about $8 a can. Most of the ones you buy that are like 20 ounces run you $40. Yes, it comes with a gauge, which is a piece of crap. A lot of them are one-time use only. Total junk. You try to get it on and it snaps off. You're paying $40 for 20 ounces when you can get 12 for $8. And then you could buy, you could buy 2 of these at $8 a pop. That's $16 for 2 of these, and you're getting 24 ounces. And then you could buy a really nice pressure gauge. It'll look something like this, but with a little gauge on it. Okay, you can get something like that for $20. So now you're in it for $36. You have a reusable high quality gauge, and you have 4 extra ounces of refrigerant. Okay, don't spend all that $40-$60 on the AC Pro. The AC Pro, you're not even going to use all of it anyways, and if you are using all of it, then you have such a big leak, it's all going to piss back out anyways. The only time you ever want to service it up is like if you're unsure if there's a leak, and you bought a car and the AC's not working and the pressure's a little low, then yeah, go ahead and put some in it and see if it works. If it works, see how long it lasts. If it doesn't last long, then you got a leak, you need to investigate that. You don't just keep putting refrigerant in it. But I mean, if your AC's working one day and then it's empty the next day, you've got a big leak. AC Pro, none of that shit's gonna fix it. None of those sealers are gonna fix it. You need to find the leak, fix the line, fix whatever's leaking, and then put a vacuum on the system, suck it down, get the moisture out, do a leak check with the vacuum, and then fill it back up to spec. Okay, so here's what I'm gonna be using. Now this gauge right here on this side, this blue gauge, is the same thing that's going to be coming on any of your, whether you buy the high quality $20 gauge I was talking about, or if you buy a can that's got the gauge that's built into it, it's the low side gauge, okay? So even though this looks all technical, that's what I have right now, and it's going to represent the same thing. So we're going to pretend that I'm just using your, whatever your cheap gauge is. And on that gauge, or on that hose you got, you're going to want to connect it to this low pressure port. Now, like I said, that's not going to fit on the high side, so you really can't screw it up. You put it on. On this one, it's got a valve. A lot of them don't though, so I just opened it up. It's coming through here and it's reading right now. I'm reading 100 and shit. I would say this is definitely not low. With the vehicle off and the system stabilized, I'm reading about 116-17 pounds, which is actually higher than I expected. I'm gonna go ahead and hook the high side up and just see what it's doing. Maybe I'm over serviced. I'll see, and that's the other thing. That's why you need to be able to read both sides, because you're not gonna know what the system's doing if you can't. All right, so system stabilized. I'm reading about, yeah. See, and the sun just came back out and it brought it up to almost 120. That's how sensitive this stuff is. If it went to shade right now, this needle would drop back down. Okay, and I'm reading about, let's see, about the same on this side, about 120. So that tells me that I don't have a clogged orifice tube or expansion valve or anything. The system is equalized on both sides of the system. The high side and low side is the same pressures. Now, next step is to start the vehicle up. Alright, and then you're going to come over and turn the AC on to max and recirculate. And if you have rear AC, you need to turn that on to max also. Make sure it's on the cool side and the fan is all the way turned up. Basically make your settings, and every vehicle is a little different. Make it so that, pretend your AC is working good and you're super hot. Set everything to cool as cold as possible, and with the fans on as hot, full blast. That's how you want to be able, you want everything to be when you're servicing it up. Alright, so with it running and the AC on, I'm currently at 50 on the low side and 235 or 40. It's about 235 probably. 230, I don't know. Somewhere in there on the high side. Now, I didn't check the temperatures yet, but I'm gonna guess it's probably 85 to 90. And if you look at 85 and 90, it's saying 45 to 55. So that would put us right in range. Right now it's down to 45 and 225-ish. Sun went down for a minute. Let's see, 225. So we're on the low side. 225 to 250 is what's okay on the high side for 85 degrees. If it's only 85 out, we're on the low side of within range. So we're like 45. We're 45 to 225. I'm pretty sure it's warmer than 85, so I'm gonna check that real quick. Okay, I don't know if you can see that, but right now it's 91 degrees. So I'm gonna roll with 90. Now if you look at 90, it says 40, the same on the low, 45 to 55, but the high side should be at least 250 and up to 270 degrees. I mean PSI. So you can see right here is a perfect example of why you need to know what the high side is doing. You put your AC Pro thing on there with your low side gauge and it says you're within the range here, but you're not over here. You can also be high, you can be low, you can have all sorts of things going on. It's just not safe, and that's why I'm making this video, to show you how I have figured out that you can do this in a safe manner. And basically, what the intent is like I said, this low pressure gauge will cut the system off when it drops to 20. Now, when you're driving down the road, the higher your engine revs, the higher the RPMs are, the lower this gauge is going to come down, and the higher this one's going to go. Okay. So if you have too much in there, this side would be okay. It might not even move, but this side could start creeping up into the 450, 500 range and blow a line out, which isn't safe. What you want to do is make it so that as you rev the engine, put just enough refrigerant in to where this drops down a little bit, but it doesn't go below, say, 30. Alright, so that means you got enough in there to where it's never going to suck down as the engine increases enough to hit 20 and shut the system down. But yet, if you do it just enough to where it never goes below like 30, then it's never going to be too much on the high side to where you're blowing lines and stuff. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, I just realized I need another person to rev the motor to do this check, because it's low right now, okay? Because it's low, even though this is perfect. On the low end of the spectrum, I suspect that as the engine RPM increases, this is going to probably get pretty close to 20. I'd like to show that to you, so I don't know. I might go get John or something, or actually I think I can put this up here and maybe show you like that. Okay, so that actually, on the low side, it did really good. It didn't go down. I don't even know if it went to 30. It stayed up pretty good. It did suck down a little bit. So I'm not at risk of the compressor shutting off right now, but it's also 90-something degrees. On a day that, let's say it's 80 degrees and it's just warm enough for me to want some AC, I could see it sucking down to 20. Okay, this stuff expands drastically. 10 degrees is like astronomical difference. So, and that's why I'm gonna go ahead and put some more in it, and I'm gonna get it in range here. Now, if your AC wasn't working and you didn't have the high side gauge and you were just trying to get it, you know, serviced up, what you saw there on the blue side would be good to stop at. Okay, unless you're doing it, if you're doing it on a cool day, then, you know, it's going to show things a little bit differently. So let's say you did it this way and it didn't drop down beyond 30 and you said, okay, it's good, I did what he said. Well, the next time you have a cool day, but you still want to use the AC, it might be dropping down to 20, in which case you're going to want to recheck it and do it again. And then you should be in the actual proper range here, but it's really hot. And right now, as I'm standing in front of the grill, it's actually at 50 and 250. 250 is the low side for 90 degrees. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna shoot a whole can in it. Actually, I don't know if I should do a whole can or not. I do have a thing that I can put on, and it's supposed to, like, I should be able to stop, like, shut it off and disconnect it. I think what I'm gonna do is use this, and I'm gonna put about half a can in, and then I'll unplug this, and then put my other gauge back on and see where it's at. Or actually, I can just use this and leave the high side hooked up and just see what the high side's doing. But I mean, right now it's actually in range, so that means it's like 95. Yeah, 95, it's 50 to 275, 275 to 300. So I'm gonna put I'm gonna take off the old can. That one's empty. The new can, you want to make sure the rubber gas gets in there. Otherwise, you puncture it and it's just going to go everywhere and you can't stop it at that point. Be careful you don't cross-thread it. Make it pretty snug, but not too much, or you'll strip the threads out. You're going to turn this in to puncture it. And then unscrew, well, this one doesn't have a valve, so we're going to unscrew it after we hook it up. Okay. Now I'm just going to open this. I hold the can generally about sideways. Some people say hold it upright. Some people upside down. I found it takes forever though if you hold it upright. It goes into it as a gas form. Some people say if you do it in liquid form it's not so great for the system, but I've never had an issue with it. Let that sit there. Let's watch the high side. Right now we're up to almost 55 and 275. close the valve. I think it took that whole can really quick. And the range is good. And 275 is perfect. Not sure if you could hear that, but 255 or 55 and 275 is perfect. I think it took the whole can, but I'm gonna have to unplug it to know for sure. Alright, so now we're at 55 and 275. So we're on the high side, or on the high side, but in range of the temperature of 90, low 90s. So right now it's perfect. It took about 12 ounces to get it there. I'm sweating like a motherfucker right now. That's all I can really show you on this one, guys. I tried to show you, talk about some different situations and things you might run into. Just remember, the numbers matter, the temperature matters, ounces matters, brands don't matter. Honestly, these 12-ounce cans right here, any parts store you go to, they're going to have their own house brand. This is CarQuest from Advance. If you went to O'Reilly, they're going to have one just like this. AutoZone's going to have them just like this. They're all under 10 bucks usually. You're getting 12 ounces. If you get that other crap where you're getting a whole, 20 ounces, you're paying 40 bucks. It's got a gauge you can't reuse on it most of the time, or it breaks while you're using it. It's not accurate. Get that $20 higher quality gauge if that's all you're going to get, or spend the money on this. I mean, if you get this is like 90 bucks from the parts store. Comes with everything, including one of these. And then at least you'll know what the system's doing. That's what I recommend. I mean, everything else beyond, if you don't know what the high side's doing, it's all guesswork. So, but I mean, if you just can't swing the money, get the $20 gauge and buy these. And then you already have the gauge, it'll last forever, and you can just keep buying these anytime you need one. So you're spending 8 bucks and just keep hooking it into your good gauge you bought. Don't buy that $40, $50, $60 shit with the crap gauge on it. You only use it once. And then you toss it in your trunk and it's fucking leaking everywhere. It's just stupid. It's a ripoff. And the companies that make that shit, they know it. They're expecting you to not know it. So be smart. If you just don't know, if you have no clue, pay the extra money and find somebody who really knows what they're doing to work on this stuff, because you can actually cause more problems than fix stuff if you don't. I guess we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.